In this video, I'm going to be talking about finding your look with the Sony FX6 and why I typically shoot S-Cinetone for these YouTube videos. Here's the story. Normally when I'm recording with the Sony FX6, I'm using two different looks, either S-Cinetone or SLog3. And also, normally when I'm recording these YouTube videos, I'm shooting with the Sony a7S III, but today, because we're talking about the Sony FX6, I'm shooting with the Sony FX6. So if you're a subscriber to this channel and you've seen plenty of my other videos in this studio, let me know if you see any difference in the picture quality. I'm currently shooting in S-Cinetone 4K, 10-bit, and I'm also using the Sony FE 35mm f1.8 lens, and that is set to f1.8. So we've got it fully open. We're trying to knock the background out as much as possible, just because I'm trying a different look for this video. And I've also got the shutter set to 150 degrees because that eliminates any flickering on the clock in the background. I'm also shooting at the low base ISO, and I have that set to 0 dB of gain. And I typically use S-Cinetone because I find that a lot of the time it looks great straight out of camera. And for a lot of these studio videos, when I import the footage into Final Cut Pro, I actually don't do any color correction at all. I just make sure that when I'm recording the video, that the levels are set to what I think is a correct exposure and what looks good to my eye. And then when I put it into the editing program, I don't need to be sitting there tweaking levels or moving colors around. I find that S-Cinetone works really great straight out of the camera and really does cut down on that extra color correcting process when making YouTube videos like this. If I did at any point think that, oh no, the white balance was off a little bit and I need to correct that in post, I do have that option to do that as well. And because I'm recording in 10-bit as well, in 4K on the Sony FX6, it does give me a bit of room to be able to manipulate the colors a little bit more, more so than if I was shooting 8-bit. This camera, the Sony FX6, does shoot in 8-bit as well. But when I'm recording these videos, I do always record in 10-bit just to have that little bit extra room in post, just in case. Obviously, 10-bit files are a little bit bigger than 8-bit files, but for me and my workflow, that's not a big concern. One thing that I've learned about growing a channel on YouTube is that if you're wanting to see growth and you're wanting to see more views, you're wanting to see more subscribers, you need to be continuously uploading content. And if you're continuously uploading content, then you're going to be making a lot of content, and it needs to be repeatable, and it needs to have the least amount of friction in being able to be created as possible. Because if you have too much friction, too many things that you need to do to be able to publish your video, it can be quite demotivating sometimes and seem a little bit too much. And I find that if you cut down and try to simplify your workflow as much as possible, put some processes in place to make things as repeatable and as seamless and as easy as possible, you're more likely to be able to create that content that gets onto your channel, that then reaches more people and then allows you to grow as a channel. And why do I mention this? Well, I mention this because if you make your process as easy as possible, it can make the whole process a lot more enjoyable, and then it makes it a lot more repeatable, and then you're able to put out more content on a more consistent basis. If you're consistently putting out content, then you're consistently growing your subscriber base, growing your audience, and then you're going to get more eyes on your videos and then more views and all that kind of stuff, leading to positive channel growth. And I find that using S-Cinetone really does help with the sustainability of creating videos for this YouTube channel. One advantage of SLog3 is that it has 15 stops of dynamic range, whereas S-Cinetone has 13 stops. So you're sacrificing those 2 stops of dynamic range. But if you're recording in a studio like this, you probably don't need that much dynamic range. But if you are recording outside, then you probably will find that having that extra dynamic range is very helpful. I'm a big believer in using the right tool for the job, and for my case, I find that S-Cinetone is the right tool for this particular job. But what if you find that S-Cinetone just doesn't really do it for you? Well, there's SLog3, and with SLog3 comes a little bit more work. But with that extra work, you do have a lot more flexibility in the different types of looks that you can create. Right now, I'm putting up different examples of LUTs on the screen, and one set of LUTs that I find is really popular online is the Phantom LUTs for the Sony FX6. And right now I'm using the neutral LUT, and I find that it is a really good starting point to get the image that I want. And that's the key thing right there. LUTs are 99.99% of the time the starting point of what you want your image to look like. If you take anything away from this video, the one thing that you should take away is that when you are applying a LUT to S-Log or just log footage in general, that is not the end destination. That is the starting point, because a lot of the time the LUTs that you're applying to the footage isn't intended for it to be the final look. They're supposed to be the starting point for the color grading process. Obviously, when you're starting with log footage, it's desaturated and it's dull and it doesn't look very good, but then you apply a LUT and then the image comes to life and it becomes a lot more vibrant and a lot more pleasing to look at. But most of the time, that's not the end destination. You'll want to keep color correcting and color grading to correct the image to get the look that you are wanting. And obviously there's extra work in this, and that's why a lot of the time I like to use S-Cinetone. But as I mentioned before, if you don't like S-Cinetone, the Sony FX6 can record in log, and you do have that extra option to be able to have that extra control in how your image looks in the editing process. One thing to take note is if you do edit in Final Cut Pro, when you import your Sony FX6 footage into the program, it will automatically apply a LUT. And sometimes this can be quite concerning because it might leave you second guessing yourself thinking, oh no, did I actually shoot in log or did I shoot with a baked in profile? However, for some reason, when you import Sony FX6 footage, Final Cut Pro will automatically add a LUT. It doesn't do this when you're importing SLog3 footage from other cameras like the Sony a7S III. I haven't had that personal experience, only with the Sony FX6, and I'm not sure exactly why it does that. I'd much rather the footage to be imported without the LUT applied, but you are able to change the video LUT to none in the video editing software and then apply the LUT that you want to actually apply. And finally, one workflow tip when using SLog3 is if you are continuously recording content in a space like this, a YouTube studio, and you find a look that you like and you've got it dialed in and you want to keep using that project after project after project, depending on what NLE you're using, you should be able to create a LUT in your editing software, and then you'll be able to just apply that to your footage for future projects. When I'm editing in Final Cut Pro, I'm able to do this with Color Finale Pro. And when I'm editing in Premiere Pro, I'm able to do this with Cinematch. And I'm sure there's other ways to export LUTs, but they're just two examples of how I would export the LUTs using the editing software that I use. And that's the video. I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, please give it a like. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to this channel for more videos on video creation in the future.